Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. I should probably move the microphone so you can actually hear me. Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream, talking about day 2 of the scouting combine. A few other topics I want to get into as well. Not sure if this is going to be a particularly long live stream because it's just me. Robbie Williams not able to join us today, but he will be at Lucas Oil Field tomorrow to watch, amongst other things, the quarterbacks. So if you have a question, and listen, because it's just me and because I don't think this was particularly the most eventful day at the Combine, if you have any questions about the Seahawks or if you have any questions or thoughts about what happened today, stick them into the live chat. Obviously, super chats are much appreciated to help support the channel. But if you have any kind of questions in the live chat, I will try and answer as many as possible on this live stream. So get those in if you have a thought that you want on anything that's been happening, either with the Seahawks or with the scouting combine or the draft in general. So, like I said, I'm going to basically do a little bit of a review of who I thought has done okay today. And then I'm going to talk about some other things that I just wanted to talk about in this stream as well. So the cornerback drills went on too long, as they always do. There was a huge number of cornerbacks. There always are these days. They did go on too long. The NFL needs to do something about this because I want to see agility testing. And the fact that the cornerback drills go on too long means that ultimately today, because the safeties took a long time to get going, there are only 2 safeties who did any agility testing because their sessions went on. They didn't finish until very, very late. And that was Dominique Hampton from Washington and Jaden Hicks from Washington State. Fair play to the 2 Pacific Northwest safeties for actually going and doing the agility testing. And Dominique Hampton, by the way, had a fantastic day. I'm going to come back to him. But we need to see this data. We want to see these players doing the agility testing. It's a really important part of the combine. And going to prime time has stopped it. And when you have all of those coaches down there for the quarterback drills and they're going on forever, I mean, how many variations do we need to see of the same thing where they're twisting and turning and catching a football and running forwards? How many times do you have to see a variation of the W drill? How many different transitions on a back pedal and then releasing and then going and tracking a football do we have to see? They could cut that in half and it might give us a better chance to actually see some of these agility testing numbers. So there's my first moan. That's my moan out of the way. I wanted to get that done. Who actually impressed then? I think the big winner today was Kamari Lassiter. If I'm going to give you my opinion, I think Kamari Lassiter's performance in the drills was excellent. I think you just sort of, he passes the eye test. You sort of look at him. He's got the size. He's lean. He was quick. He's very decisive with his movements. Obviously, this is somebody who has been considered a late first-round pick. So it's not entirely surprising that he would be one of the players who had a very good combine. I'm just going to adjust the microphone a little bit. Had a very good combine and would secure that kind of status. But when he then goes and runs a 3-cone, let me just get the numbers up here. A 3-cone, 6.62. Fantastic. You know, that is sort of an elite level 3-cone for a cornerback. And given that Nate Wiggins is very slight and very small, Terrion Armstead's not that kind of an athlete. I think obviously Mitchell from Toledo is going to be right up there as well. I just think Kamari Lassiter may well have pushed himself into the top 20 off the back of this, if not the top 22. So I thought Kamari Lassiter was the big winner, and I think that he's going to really sort of shoot up into that. He should shoot up into the first rounds. I don't think many people have been talking about him today, but I think he deserves a lot more attention for what he showed on the field. Another winner I thought today, and this is a bit of a surprising one, and I love the fact on my notes, I've written the notes down on my laptop. It's actually predictive text has changed Kalen King to Karen King. So part of me wants to call him Karen King for the rest of this stream now. But Kalen King had a really bad Senior Bowl. He just kept getting beat. He kind of felt like he was going through the motions a little bit. He then didn't run a good 40. I think he ran like in the 4.61, something like that. I'll try and get the official time for him. So didn't run a great 40 time. And you're kind of thinking, they were talking about moving him to safety on the broadcast and all of that stuff. So 4-6-1 was official in the end. They were talking of moving him to safety. But then during the drills, he looked really good. He looked smooth. He looked in control of his body. There was a lot of them in the back pedal. They're all over the place. The transition wasn't good at all. It just seemed methodical, thoughtful, precise, sudden in his movements. And when I was watching Kalen King, I just thought, okay, if he's going to sink, and I've not been a massive fan of his, but some people were saying first round pick, second round pick, not that long ago. If he's going to last to day 3, based on what I saw today, I'd be thinking if I was a defensive backs coach, I'd get him in and see if he can work with something there, because he might not be the fastest, but as they said during the broadcast, I think it was yesterday, Joe Hayden ran a 4.7 or something at the combine. So it's not always the biggest indicator. And maybe he just needs a bit of seasoning. Maybe he needs to be coached up. Maybe he needs a bit of guidance. I thought Kalen King did very well in those on-field drills today. Another player I wanted to mention, Ryan Watts at Texas. Now, this was a player that, while I was watching Byron Murphy and Tyrondre Sweat during the season, he caught my eye. Now, he wasn't sort of one of the defensive players for Texas that was really taught up, but he just kept making plays. And I had him on the board, and he was not getting any traction whatsoever. No one was talking about him. And I just figured, well, he's either not going to declare, or maybe he's not eligible, or whatever it is, or maybe he's just no good, and kind of doubted myself a little bit there. I had him in round 4 initially on my board. And then, as time went on, I thought, look, there's just no hype about this guy. And then I sort of dug around. What kind of athletic testing is he going to do? What was sort of his high school scouting reports? And I moved him down to round 5. And I kind of wish I hadn't now, because I thought he did very well today. He's not lightning quick. I'm going to try and get his results up. So he ran a 4.5340, but that's perfectly acceptable for a cornerback with his size. He has 34.5-inch arms. That is unbelievable. So I think he's somebody that, if he is going to be there on day 3, I think is a very interesting player. Again, somebody that you can work with and mold. We've seen Mike McDonald do a very good job with sort of no-name cornerbacks. And if you wanted to add to your depth, and I kind of hope they do keep adding cornerbacks, because it's an important position. You do need depth there. I hope that Ryan Watts gets an opportunity. I thought Jarvis Brownlee Jr. did a very good job during drills. Again, looks the part, big, muscular body, very quick. I thought Marcellus Dial was somebody who I like the frame. Just somebody I want to watch a little bit more of. I've not studied the tape on him, so I want to go away and see what he does. So they were kind of the names that really stood out for me. Terry Arnold looked pretty crisp during his drills as well. But the one thing I did think when I was watching those, with the exception of, obviously the bigger names, didn't really feel like I was watching anybody who thought, wow, there's a top 10 pick or anything like that with the cornerbacks. Then the safeties came along, and the thing that really surprised me with the safeties is their hands were really good. When they were having to go and high point the football on some of those corner routes they were defending and stuff like that, and when they were sort of having to transition, which is, I was kind of, why do they get the safeties doing all the transitioning and stuff like that? Because it's how often does a safety have to do that? They're not cornerbacks. I'd kind of rather see drills designed on them sort of having to move sideline to sideline and showing their range a little bit more. And so those short bursts and attacking up to the line of scrimmage, there must be some drills they can do for that. They haven't kind of doing the cornerback stuff. Feels like a bit of a waste of time, but hands were really good from the safeties. Surprisingly, over and over again, like leaping up and high pointing the football, making difficult catches, scooping balls off the ground. So I thought it was a really, really interesting session from the safeties. And again, there was nobody out on that field playing safety. There was no Earl Thomas. There was, they showed Minka Fitzpatrick's workout at one point on the NFL Network, and you thought, yeah, there's nobody like this out there today. There's nobody who looks and is performing the way that he did to be a high first-round pick. However, there were some interesting players. And listen, this is a position that for a while now, I've wanted the Seahawks just to go, no more big spending. Curtis Allen has been tweeting about this today. And I think it's very interesting, where the market has gone in the NFL. Nobody's paying safeties. There's talk now about, well, look, Tampa Bay might want to franchise tag Antoine Winfield and there's another safety whose name I've completely. Oh, is it Carl Duggar at New England? Do they really want to franchise these guys? Because the market value is just not there. Do you want to let them hit the market and you can get a longer term deal done at better value? Because the league is just treating safety position a little bit like it's treating running back position. And here the good old Seahawks with their $21 million cap hit for Quandre Diggs and however $27 million or whatever it is that Jamal Adams is getting, plus the paying Julian Love. And you think, what are we doing here? I'd like to just sort of move on from all of that, go younger, go cheaper at the safety position. And I thought there were some players within this class that are going to be available later on that would enable you to do that. The first player I want to mention is Dominique Hampton from Washington. Now, I've watched a lot of Washington stuff. I haven't studied him. It's going to be one of the first things I do next week. So they were speaking very highly of him on the broadcast. He's tested very, very well. I reached out to somebody I know at the University of Washington and said, tell me a bit more about this guy. And this was the review I've got. Freak of nature, smart, consistent, great dude, quiet killer. Our defense scheme funneled the vast majority of plays to the strong safety by design, and he was good enough in that key position for us to go to a championship. And I read all that and thought, get me some of that. I'll have some of that. So if he's going to be there on day 3 or whatever, that's the kind of player the Seahawks need. Someone who is consistent, someone that is intelligent, someone who, I like the phrase quiet killer. I think the Seahawks have been loud and soft for too long at safety. Jamal Adams, yap. Every time, oh, look, there's a 7-yard gain on the running game, but Jamal made a tackle. And he's like in the face of the guy who's just caught a ball on him or run over him or something. And then they get on the goal line and Jamal Adams will duck out of a tackle and let them go in from close in. Give me a quiet killer instead. Less of this, more of this. I think that's what I would like to see from the safety position. So Dominique Hampton, very interesting. And look, but all of that sort of stuff that was mentioned there from my source at UW, to me, that sounds like the kind of thing that Mike McDonald wants from his safeties. There was that great review of the Baltimore defense that appeared on Reddit from the guy who was like a Ravens and a Seahawks fan, bizarrely. And he talked about sort of the intelligence and what is kind of needed at safety. And you look at the Ravens safety position, they did not have like 4-3 and 4-4 runners at safety. They had just intelligent, physical, smart players. So I think Dominique Hampton is somebody who he could easily be an option for the Seahawks there. And I enjoyed watching his workout today. I thought he was very good. Tyler Nubin's my highest rated safety on my horizontal board. He didn't do any testing, but during drills, I thought it looked very smooth, looked the part. I think he's a very interesting player. I think he fits into that range where there's like a big black hole for the Seahawks, where they have like pick 16 and then nothing until 78. And he's going to fall probably squarely in the middle of that. So I'm not sure if they're going to have a chance to draft him. Disappointing not to see blog favorite Malik Mustafa, who I interviewed recently. If you want to go and check that out, it's on my YouTube channel. He didn't do any testing or any drills today. He didn't say anything about an injury when I spoke to him, so I can only presume that was something that has popped up since then, between then and now. So I guess we'll have to wait to the pro day to see him work out. But he didn't do any working out today. One of the names that I forgot to mention amongst the cornerbacks, I thought Josh Newton had a good workout today, and he's somebody who was big things were expected of him going into last season, and it never really happened. I thought he was quite inconsistent, and it was good to see him have a good workout. And he's somebody who could still go a bit higher than maybe people are projecting, because I think people have been sort of, and I was one of them, have been sort of sold off on the average 2023. And I think he reminded everybody today that he is still a good football player with the way that he tested and ran in the drills. So that was the defensive backs. Again, it wasn't a mind-blowing session. I think we all know what we're waiting for: the offensive linemen, we're waiting for the quarterbacks, we're waiting for the receivers, not so much the running backs this year. But that's kind of what we're waiting for. We've kind of got the defense out the way. I don't think it's been that exciting so far, the combine. We obviously had Braden Fisk yesterday, was superb. Makai Wingo deserves some attention, but both of those guys have got short arms on the defensive line. Ruka Rororo did well. Byron Murphy did well, but again, he's got short arms. Chop Robinson, Jared versus Dallas Turner did well. All three of them are going to go very, very early, but there's not a lot of depth at pass rusher based on what we saw. And then at linebacker, Peyton Wilson did well. Adrian Cooper had a good workout. but there was nothing to get excited about there. The note that I made from yesterday was I think the Seahawks are going to have to get in the veteran linebacker market because the draft is not providing any answers. I'm going to get onto the tight ends in a bit, but overall, it's not been that exciting. And then I wanted to highlight this before I get onto the tight ends. There was an article published on Sportskeeda from friend of the blog, Tony Pauline, who had some medical information. So it was reported by Ian Rappaport that Michael Penix Jr.'s medicals have all come back fine and dandy. I'm a bit skeptical of that report. I'm not doubting Ian Rappaport's sources or anything, but it did very much sound like the agent has called me and told me everything's great. This is, when you get stuff like that, it's quite transparent, quite easy to see through it. Tony reported during the combine today. Since last summer, starting with my preview of NFL prospects from North Carolina State, I've mentioned the medical red flags that were bound to be raised on Peyton Wilson, the talented Wolfpack linebacker. Even as late as yesterday, when I wrote about his tremendous work out of the combine, I again mentioned that medicals will ultimately dictate where Wilson lands in the draft. Today, I received word that Wilson and another player from the ACC received the worst medical grades from the group of players that worked out on Thursday. A source characterized the grades and reports as ugly. The other player mentioned was Braden Fisk of Florida State. Another player pointed out for his outstanding combine performance. Teams will evaluate the medical exams and testing on both players here in Indianapolis. Usually during the week of the draft, medical staffs from each franchise meet with their general manager, coaches, and other decision makers to review the results. Players can be cleared or flagged. A medical flag usually results in a round or two penalty added to the grade of a player with medical concerns. In some instances, a player will be medically failed, which means their name is taken off the board altogether. So there you go. It's not great news because, I really like Peyton Wilson, and, having a report there say that his medicals were ugly, it's not unexpected, but it's disappointing. And then Braden Fisk being the other one, had such a good workout, looked so good during the drills. He looked like a freak of nature yesterday, like an absolute mutant, a mutant with short arms, but a mutant nonetheless. And yeah, that was a bit of a bucket of cold water on what sort of he achieved if he has got some medical red flags there. So that is disappointing, has to be said, and kind of adds to the overall nature of this. And look, the combine's going to pick up when the offensive line get going. That's the strength of the draft. The quarterbacks, the top three are not going to work out tomorrow. But again, they're sort of the headline positions, I guess, with the receiver as well. That's where a lot of the excitement is. But I have to say, it's not been amazing so far. And there's been a lot of players who haven't worked out either, like Malik Mustafa, like Junior Colson. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else off the top of my head who hasn't performed here. Kool-Aid McKinstry couldn't, obviously. Yeah, so it's not been a great couple of days so far. So that's the report from Tony Pauline. On to tight ends. So I thought it was okay. There's not a lot of tight ends who are part of this draft class. That is, I think, the reason why they've just shoved them on the end of the workouts today. I wish instead they would have put the tight ends before the offensive linemen and got them out the way that way, because then there was a better chance of them actually doing the agility testing. I'm going to keep an eye on that, see if the results emerge while I'm on this live stream. But I like to pay attention to the short shuttle and the 10-yard split with the tight ends, because the information that I have on other good tight ends or leading tight ends in the league is there's a general consistency with performing well in the short shuttle and the 10-yard splits. Like Rob Gronkowski, didn't run a great 40, but ran a 1.58.10. Travis Kelce a 1.61, Kittle a 1.59, Mark Andrews a 1.54, TJ Hawkinson a 1.63, Sam Laporta a 1.59, David Njoku a 1.61. So they're all sort of in that 1.5 or early 1.6 range. Now, the great thing about the tight ends who actually ran, Brock Bowers didn't run. That's a name that I forgot who didn't do anything today. The ones who actually performed, there were a lot of 1.5 10-yard splits. So Jaheim Bell ran a 1.58. Devin Culper 1.55. Theo Johnson a 1.55. Tanner McLaughlin a 1.58. Tip Ryman a 1.55. Jatavian Sanders a 1.59. Ben Sinnott a 1.59. Cade Stover a 1.59. And Jared Wiley ran a 1.62. So all of those players ran a 10-yard split to make them interesting. So we wait now for the short to see if there are any. I can see some are coming in. So, okay, a handful of them have done the short shuttles. So Theo Johnson ran a 4.19 short shuttle. So Theo Johnson's, I had him in the second round. Theo Johnson's probably going to go in the second round. I mean, if you were running a what was his 10-yard split again? Let me go and find that. So he was a 1.55 10-yard split, similar to Mark Andrews, and yet his short shuttle was, significantly faster with a 4.19. That is the kind of workout that suggests that Theo Johnson's got the potential to be quite a special tight end at the next level. Dallin Holken ran a 4.21, which was good for him. He ran a 1.66.10, so not great, but a good short shuttle. Ben Sinnott, who was the star of the drills, who was on a different level to everybody else today. Ben Sinnott was superb. He attacked every drill with a purpose. He was just flat out, foot to the pedal, all in, but was in control doing it. Caught the ball well, got out of his breaks, ran his precise routes, good hands. I think I might have mentioned that. And then you look at the testing, to be able to run a 1.59 10-yard split and then follow that up with a 4.23 short shuttle. Okay, I mean, here's the comparison. Sam Laporta, 1.59 10-yard split as well, and a 4.25 short shuttle. So Ben Sinnott's short shuttle is 0.2 of a second faster than Sam Laporta's. Otherwise, they're the same player physically. I had Ben Sinnott in round 3. I'll be bumping him up to round 2 off the back of that because I like the tape. Loved him at Kansas State. There was never any talk about what he is physically. Now we know. Very, very similar to Sam Laporta, who was exceptional as a rookie. So Ben Sinnott, big winner today. Tip Ryman, a 4.26 short shuttle. That's superb. 1.55 10-yard split. Great numbers for him. Jatavian Sanders ran a really bad first 40, 4.74, and had like a 1.66 split or something like that. Might have been like a 1.72 or something. It was awful. Then ran a 1.59 10-yard split and a 4.69 40 on his second run. He has chucked in a 4.32 short shuttle, which is really good. Cade Stover ran a 4.45, which is fine. Travis Kelce ran a 4.42. Rob Gronkowski ran a 4.47. So he is well within the range there. And Trey Knox ran a 4.54. So they are the short shuttle times. I'm going to do a review post at the end of this stream. So I will put all this data together and explain what it all means before I go to bed at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Ben Sinnott, by the way, ran the fastest 3-cone at a 6.82. Ben Sinnott, fantastic. I mean, just take a bow. Just the big winner of the day. Just the big winner of the day. I think in fact, including the defensive backs, Ben Sinnott was my gold star performer of the day. So there we go. That's what I thought about the defensive backs and the tight ends. Like I mentioned, I had a few other topics to get into. We've got a couple of super chats. This from Hunter says, I wonder if John was hoping that Quinn Ewers would declare. I think he probably was. I get the sense that the fact that he name dropped Quinn Ewers immediately after the last draft meant something. I think Quinn Ewers is the kind of player that John Schneider likes. He can just flick of the wrist. It's very Aaron Rodgers-esque, get the ball downfield. Very easy arm strength. And just releases unbelievably rapid at times. Like he's under pressure. You think, oh, he's going to get sacked. Could be a sack fumble. The ball somehow comes out. And you saw that against Washington. And I thought he had played a lot better against Washington than people think. When I think I mentioned at the time, I went back and watched Ewers twice and Penix twice right afterwards because I have no life. And, we're just watching Ewers in isolation and how he performed. Played very, very well in that game. So I think that there is a chance that John really likes Quinn Ewers. Good character, very religious like John is as well. I think that they would connect. And I think that Quinn Ewers, he probably was hoping he would declare, but he hasn't. I don't think you can afford to say, okay, well, we'll just wait till next year for Quinn Ewers, because what if Quinn Ewers leads Texas to the national championship. He's got the talent to do it. He could end up winning the Heisman. He could end up being first overall pick. So what do you do then? Like trade everything to go up and get it? I mean, like the team at the top might not want to trade in the same way that Chicago won't want to trade number one this year. So you can't really act like that. But I think you're probably right that he was hoping that Quinn Ewers would probably declare. And if he did, he might have been lasted to 16. Odium says, I wish the Hawks had lost to Cleveland, so they wouldn't have done the Williams trade and would still have had their second. I'd gladly let my in-laws gloat over a meaningless game to have that pick back. Odium was the person who sent in the super chat of the season when he was talking about how his in-laws were, I think they were Browns fans, and it was a hilarious win, and we all had a good laugh about that. And Odium, that was probably my favorite moment of a pretty average season, quite frankly. Your comment. I do agree with you. And thank you for the super chat. I agree with you. Like the Cleveland game, immediately afterwards, it was fun to sort of get through that one with a win and be top of the NFC West and sort of be thinking very positively. But it was a false dawn right before the trade deadline. And I think the Seahawks looked at it and thought they're in first place. The Niners were on a 3-game losing streak. They probably thought, here's our chance. Go and get Leonard Williams. We can win this division. And like 5 days later, they got absolutely pummeled by the Ravens. The Niners won, and the rest is history. It was the timing of the trade was horrendous. If the trade deadline had happened the week earlier, then, or the week after, I think we'd be talking about the Seahawks having like the number 48 pick or whatever it is right now. And I tend to agree with you. I really like Leonard Williams. He would have been a free agent anyway. And they could have gone and we could be talking about go and get him or something like that. And still having that second round pick, which could go on some of the players we're talking about today. Nubin, Sinnott, maybe. I don't know. Pick somebody else. Junior Colson, a lot of people like. I'm not sure he's around 2. Having not tested and a bit lighter than many people thought. But that is a valuable second round pick that you're not going to have now. It could be a quarterback. You know, if Michael Penix lasted round 2, could have been a quarterback, or could be one where you move up to get the quarterback. So that was a costly trade. And that header from Jamal Adams is like one last thing from Jamal Adams that really is going to really piss me off forever. Is that header? It was fun at the time, and now it's cost them a second round pick. If you have super chats, send them in. If you have any questions, send them in. I will answer, because we've only got a few comments. We've got quite a few people watching live, but we don't have as many comments as usual. So if we don't get any more super chats, I might just run through some of those questions, but of course, support the channel if you can. So the other things I wanted to talk about, firstly, I had a chance to watch some of the quarterback interviews today. I thought Bo Nix gave a fantastic interview to Pro Football Talk. Go and check it out. I can see a lot of teams liking Bo Nix when they have met with him now. And it wouldn't surprise me if John Schneider likes Bo Nix. There is something about him that I think a lot of teams are going to like. And depending on how he maybe tests and throws, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes quite a bit earlier than some people think. And I thought Drake May spoke very, very well. And I think it was Rappaport or somebody else was saying that he really impressed teams in meetings, that he came across like a true alpha. I can totally see that. Like Drake May is like an old head on young shoulders. And I can imagine him in time really turning into that kind of classic everyman quarterback who the locker room rallies behind. And he won't be an instant leader, but there is definitely something to be said about his character and his personality. I think John Schneider is going to love Drake May. Go and check out the video I did earlier talking about whether the Seahawks might trade up. I think that John Schneider is going to love Drake May. The personality, the size, the improvisation, the arm strength, the moments of magic that he produces. I mean, like the guy threw a pass left-handed for a touchdown because his right hand was being tackled, for God's sake. Like he is erratic. I thought he was, even though UNC beat South Carolina, I thought Spencer Rattler played better in that game. I thought he lost games he should have won where he could have been the difference. You would have expected him to be the difference during the season, and he didn't do it. I thought he had too many interceptions in 2023. But I think there's a chance that John Schneider will just look at this is what he could become. And what he could become, and I'll happily admit, as somebody who doesn't rate him as high as maybe some others do, he could be a Josh Allen, and he could be a Justin Herbert, and he could be that type of player because the physical profile is there. So I think there's a chance that he could be very high on Seattle's board, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just inquired about what it would take to move up. But it's going to be very difficult. It'll all rest on what the Patriots want to do. If the Patriots trade for Justin Fields, then all bets are off. If they don't, and he goes somewhere else and they don't do anything at quarterback, I was listening to Diana Rossini saying that even the Patriots may have just checked in with Baker Mayfield's people at the Combine. If that's what they're going to do, if they send a veteran or something like that, then they might be willing to move out of that. And I think Elliot Wolf will be very keen to draft a left tackle because I've gone on about this before. The Wolf family are trenches guy. Ron Wolf is a trenches guy. And if they don't rate Drake May, then, and some people don't, or if they just sort of think, we can get Fields or we can go in a different direction and get a left tackle, then it opens up the chance of number 3 being available. And maybe the Seahawks would look at that. Or maybe Drake may slip a little bit. I mean, look, there's still so much to be determined here. So I'm just saying on that. So that was the first thing that I wanted to mention. The other thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to mention was you can read too much into these things, but I don't mind doing that from time. I'm not saying anything definitive here. I think if you're not curious during an off season in the NFL, then you're kind of like you're a fun sponge, as my son might say. You're just sucking it all in. So JJ McCarthy was asked, who are his top 3 wide receivers that he would like to throw to in the NFL on CBS? And put yourself in his shoes. You're a quarterback. Who would you like to throw to? I mean, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, maybe. I don't know. Think of all the names you could mention. Want to pick a Seahawk? DK. Of all the players JJ McCarthy could have mentioned for that answer, his answer was Jackson Smith-Njigba. And he said, I got a chance to watch him from the sideline playing for Ohio State when I was a freshman, and he looked really good. Maybe he did. I don't know. I can't remember what the stats were when JJ McCarthy was stood on the sideline watching Ohio State. So it would have been 2021, wasn't it? Let's have a look. 2021, Ohio State football, ESPN. Let's check this out. I'm interested now. Okay. Schedule. I have to go on the schedule and then pick out 2021. So Ohio State lost to Michigan 42-27. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, okay, fair enough. 11 catches, 127 yards. So he had a big game. He was Ohio State's leading receiver. He had 1 more catch than Garrett Wilson and 8 more yards, but Garrett Wilson had a touchdown. Chris Olave, 7 catches, 88 yards. So he played well. He played well against Michigan that day. But of all the receivers in the NFL, he's going to pick Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, who's not really shown... No, it's not proven anything yet. I mean, that's not his fault. I mean, it's Shane Waldron and Seattle's offense and Pete Carroll and stuff like that. Hopefully he'll be a lot better next year. But why would you get to Jackson Smith-Njigba as your first one there? That must have been a heck of a performance to sort of stick in his mind. Plus, JJ McCarthy's from Michigan and Jackson Smith-Njigba's from Ohio State. So either it's just a fantastic compliment to Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'm happy. This is a wild warning. If you do not enjoy wild speculation, then you might want to just leave the stream at this point. Part of me just wonders if he's petitioning a little bit to say, hey, Seattle, come and get me. I don't know. I mean, why would he do that? Well, I guess why would he do that? Mike McDonald? Maybe he really so thinks, I really like that Harbaugh system, and Baltimore has Lamar, and the Chargers have got Justin Herbert. So if he wants to play for the next best thing to a Harbaugh, it's Mike McDonald. So maybe he just thinks, I want to go there. I don't know. I mean, maybe he does. I'm just saying. And they'd have to trade up because he's not going to get to 16. There's just too much. I don't think I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't trade up for him. I probably wouldn't take him. I wouldn't take him at 16. I wouldn't. But I mean, maybe ask me tomorrow when he's weighed whether I would. If he's weighed and he chucks the ball around brilliantly yesterday, and he's 220 instead of 200, and he throws it downfield as well as anybody else, I reserve the right to change my mind. But yeah, if he's 205 pounds and throwing downfield like he was at Michigan, then I'm not taking him at 16. But I'm just saying, that was an interesting answer to me. And was he sort of sending a message there? Some of these players are going to have an idea of where they want to go. They're going to have an idea of where they want to go. So I'm just saying, maybe he was saying, come and get me play. I do want to answer this because I said there are no more super chats. So like I said, a lot of effort is going into the blog and the channel this week. So if you have a question and you're prepared to do a super chat instead of just normal comment, then fine. But I am going to do a run through the comments. So I'm going to do this one first. Jason says, JJ McCarthy is only 21. He has time to put on weight. Every time I mention his weight, somebody says this. And my answer every time is the same. Everybody said he needed to put on weight 12 months ago, and he didn't do it. All of the talk was he needs to add weight. If he's going to come out next year, he needs to add weight, gain muscle, and just be sturdier for the NFL. And he didn't do it. So this idea that he's 21, he has time to put on weight, I'm not exactly sure I agree with that. And to sort of turn it in, I mean, I'm not an NFL athlete, and I am definitely not 21. But I train pretty hard consistently for 7 years. I'm 6'4". I'm very capable of adding muscle to a certain extent in my upper body. Once you hit a level, that is it. I can't, short of taking gear, I cannot get bigger. So for some people, you cannot just add weight unless you want to get fat. So it might be that this is just who he is. Now, when I looked at him during the interviews today, he looks a bit thicker. So I'm optimistic on that. Maybe he has been able to gain some weight, but he has to, and he hasn't been able to do it yet. And the comparison that people keep making is that he looks a lot like a tall Bryce Young, that in terms of stature, he's like a bit of a taller version of that. Now, Bryce Young is short and might be 180 pounds, quite frankly. Who knows what he plays at? And I do sense that maybe JJ McCarthy plays like 195. But I just wouldn't assume that he can just, he can put on weight. I wouldn't assume that. So, I'm just saying, people keep saying, well, he's only young. Not everybody can just chuck on 20, 30 pounds of great weight. Christopher has sent in a super chat. Which quarterback could help his stock the most? The great performance of the combine. Probably JJ McCarthy, because Diana Rossini was saying, I think it was Diana Rossini. She was on a podcast with Robert Mays. I was kind of tentatively listening to it because it was more preferable than listening to the parroting that was going on during the combine about trying to be funny all the time and not actually talking about anything that's happening on the field. I think it was her, not Robert Mays, that said that one person thought 1, 2, 3, 4 could be quarterbacks, which would be really interesting. Really interesting. So if he can if he can be big, if he can turn up, if he's 215 even when he weighs tomorrow, and he throws it as, and the good thing for him is if he can go out and even look remotely close throwing it down the field compared to Nix and Penix and Rattler, then people will go, okay, if there's a noticeable difference there and he's in his arm strength, then it won't help him. And if he's 200 pounds, it won't help him. But you see where I'm coming from with that? It could, if he shows well compared to them, you might even see the Patriots take him at 3 or something, and maybe somebody else takes May at 4, moves up. I don't know. So I would say him, because I think Penix is gonna. We all know what Penix is gonna do. He's gonna launch it downfield, and we all know what. I think Bo Nix doing the 60-yard flea flicker at the Senior Bowl is going to put to rest any doubts about his arm strength, and Rattler's got good arm strength. So I think the one person who maybe Rattler could really help his stop with a great performance, but I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy for that answer. Christopher, thank you for the super chat as well. Really appreciating it. I always get this because people say, oh, well, what? Like somebody said JJ McCarthy doesn't have a big arm, and then somebody else says, what do you mean? I've seen this in the chat here. He has got a big arm. I don't think he's got a big arm. Like, I hope tomorrow that he can show that it's better than he showed at Michigan. There's no big arm there. There's not a special arm. A lot of his passes downfield flutter a little bit. I do have a bit of I fell into the trap as well. That one pass against Ohio State last season, 2023, where it sort of just whistles over the shoulder of one defender and like fits into this improbably tight window for a catch. I think that gets picked off possibly in the NFL. So it looked great. I'm not. He does not have that sort of big, classic, wow arm. I think it's a fairly average arm, and I think that's the main reason why he needs to add weight, is because he needs to be able to drive that football into tight windows. He needs to get that ball downfield. He's very good on the run, very good on third downs, very good at scrambling. He's definitely an athlete. I expect him to run well and test well. I just don't think he's got a big arm. So, Odium set another super chat in. What are your top 3 priorities for the Hawks going into this draft? Can they achieve those without a second-round pick? That's a great question. It's not. I haven't written down a list of priorities because how am I going to answer this? My priority going into every single draft for the Seahawks, until they find their Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, you know what I mean? Until you get one of those guys, that's my priority every single year. And when I've exhausted all possibility of we can't get that guy this year, I'm moving on to everything else. And that to me should be the biggest need for the Seahawks until they address that. And the argument I see too often from people at the minute who are Seahawks fans or even in the media, it's weird at the minute, is that, well, who's going to be better than Geno in 2023? That is an irrelevant question. The question needs to be, who is going to be the quarterback when the Seahawks realistically are next challenging for a Super Bowl? And I don't think that's Geno Smith. I don't think this concept of just get him a great defense, great O-line, great supporting cast, and he might be able to do it. It's like, yeah, just get literally everything else. Like, it's just not. You are going to have flaws on the Chiefs have flaws on their roster. It's how you make up for those flaws with great coaching, which is what the Chiefs do on defense and offense. And how much can your quarterback elevate the team when he is required to do so, which is what Patrick Mahomes does better than anybody else at the minute. You are going to have to handle not always having the best O-line, best defensive line, and all that stuff. And the best way to do it is great coaching and quarterback play. So for me, until they address that, that's the number one priority. Can they address it in this draft? I think it's an interesting quarterback draft. I spoke to somebody who has forgotten more about football than I will ever know, and he's not a fan of this quarterback class, but still thought there might be 6 of them going in the first round. So I personally rate it probably a little bit higher than he did. I'm interested in this quarterback class. And I think, even on Penix, who I've been very balanced about, has got special qualities. And I don't know. I'm open-minded about this whole draft class. And I appreciate that maybe I have graded some of them lower than, or I'm probably not going to change the grades at this point, but maybe some of them will surpass the grades. That's the best way of putting it. So anyway, QB number 1. Priority number 2 for me is to come out of the offseason great in the trenches, but I don't think you necessarily do that during the draft. I think keeping Leonard Williams, I think Leonard Williams is really good, and I would want to keep him, frankly. And then I would want to get improvements to the offensive line. Like, if you can't get the quarterback, I'd be very open to doing that in the draft early. But I also think they need some proven quality experience on the offensive line, and would be perhaps rather than do that in free agency than necessarily just lead on the draft. And then I think they've got to get young at certain positions like safety, and that would be a draft priority for me as well. Filling in some of those gaps. Can you find impact quality contributors round 3, 4, 5 who because that you have to do that. Every team who's going to succeed has to find a player in round 4 who can surpass expectations around 5. And it was the same for the Seahawks back in the day when they won it. And it's the same for the Niners and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They've all got guys who have not just been good players drafted in like rounds 4, 5, 6, whatever. They've become fantastic players. So you've got to do a bit of that. So I hope that kind of answers it. I mean, I'll have a better picture after the combine and everything, like and after free agency, what my proper priorities will be for the draft. But I hope that is some kind of answer that is satisfactory. Let's see what else we've got. Ippolito. I'm sorry if I butchered your name there. I want to know, are we going to draft a quarterback this year? Very possible, I'd say. I think John's itching to draft a quarterback. It doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen. It's all about circumstance. Can they trade up? That's the first question. Do they want to trade up? I suppose that's 1B as well. It's the first question. If not, is there somebody they're prepared to take at 16? Can they trade down and get somebody? Does anybody last around 3, surprisingly? Is there a diamond in the rough there? I think they are going to draft a quarterback this year. I think a quarterback will be drafted between rounds 1 and 7, perhaps even in the first 3 rounds. And I've gone back and forth on this because initially I thought everything was pointing towards drafting a quarterback. Then, like sort of last week, I thought, maybe they'll just carry on what they've been doing, not reach, not feel like a prisoner to need, just draft the best players available. But I just get this. How many more years can you wait to draft a quarterback? Like John keeps talking about how they keep passing on the quarterbacks. Eventually they kind of have to draft one. So that's what I'd say to that. Christopher says, if Geno does stay this year, what happens if he balls out with Grubb? Then suppose we have a rookie this year ready to roll. Does Geno become worth more as a trade candidate next year? I don't think he does. I mean, Geno's played quite well last 2 years, and there was very minimal interest as a free agent a year ago, and I do think they've been sort of talking and nothing's emerged. I'll tell you what I will say, though. Jordan Schultz put that report out. Nobody's confirmed it. Brady Henderson is very well connected to the Seahawks, has said that he's not been able to confirm the report. And if anyone's listening to this who sort of wants my opinion, I'd just follow Brady Henderson. Follow his lead. He is the one with his finger on the pulse. So I'm not sure if he balls out, whether there would be, a great market for him. Potentially, it might be that there is a market, and at the minute there isn't. That's a distinct possibility. There might be a team that says, hey, that bridge worked for you. Could it work for us? And the same with Alex Smith went off to Washington, didn't he? I think it was, after doing a good job for the Chiefs. But I don't think they get the return for Alex Smith, because Alex Smith had probably been a bit more consistent for a longer period at that point. Geno Smith had 2 good years in Seattle. I suppose it will be 3 years if he balls out. I'm just not sure how much longer. I'm not sure that John Schneider is. I think, again, like I said earlier, I think people are too concerned in what happens in 2024 and are not thinking about, the path that the Seahawks need to go on to get beyond that. And I'm not sure how much longer the Seahawks are going to be interested in this whole let's tread water in the 8, 9, 10 win range and hope a quarterback flops onto our doormat one day. I think they might either have to be more aggressive or they might have to take some chances and take some risks. I'm looking through. I think we've done all the super chats. Should we be concerned, says Ultra J362? Should we be concerned that the team hasn't made any cuts to overpriced veterans? I wouldn't be worried about that. It is coming. I don't know why they haven't done it. I'm waiting to enjoy the moment that Jamal Adams is cut, but it hasn't happened yet. But like I say, it is coming. I imagine that once the combine's out of the way, you're going to start hearing news on that. Andrew A says, check out his tape against TCU. He's talking about JJ McCarthy. Semis last year, strong arm through all the passes when they let him fly. The tape is there. Andrew, if there's one thing I can never be accused of, it's not watching tape. Like, my life is very dull. I've watched virtually all of JJ McCarthy's games, and I have watched all of Michael Penix's games for Washington, and all of Bo Nix's games for Oregon now. I haven't watched all of Drake Mays. Last year, I watched every single game the top 4 quarterbacks ever played. I watched most of Hendon Hooker's. I've watched the games. He has not got a strong arm. I think people get mistaken here where they think, unless you sort of like run up and it's like a toddler throwing a football, that, everything's a strong. Like, there are levels of arm strength. Like, Michael Penix can launch you could probably throw a hole in a brick wall. Like, just because some of JJ McCarthy's passes go downfield does not necessarily mean it's about velocity. It's about that torque that you really drive on the ball. It's about fitting it into tight windows. Now, look at some of the windows that Penix fits passes into. Like, it's not all just about distance and, throwing a lot of yards. It's, he hasn't got a strong arm. He hasn't shown that. If he's put on weight and strength and he throws well tomorrow, I will change my mind. But I've seen plenty of tape. This one says, Brando says, is Jordan Travis interesting for a look at in the later rounds? It'll come down to the medicals, but he suffered a really bad injury. I liked his play. I don't think he's a dynamic NFL starting quarterback. I mean, very late in the draft, is he somebody, if you miss out early on, I guess if the medicals are okay, but that serious injury really is going to hurt him, I think. This from Consumer says, what do you think will happen with DK's next contract? I don't know. Let's see what he does in Ryan Grubb's offense. But I think the Seahawks are fully committed to DK Metcalf. Andrew says, if our GM was not drunk last year, we could have traded up and had Richardson. Joke. I like John Schneider, but he lost the power struggle with Pete on personal. Hence why Pete fell on the axe. I'd suggest maybe having a bit more respect, Andrew. I thought the Seahawks had a good draft last year. Who were they trading up with? Like, the Panthers, when you trade up to number 1. If they'd have took Bryce Young there, how do you feel about that? Because a lot of teams thought he was the best. So Carolina traded up to number 1, gave up a fortune. You couldn't match that. Houston didn't want to trade down with you and lose CJ Stroud. I know they traded up and then took Will Anderson, but really they were trading up to make sure they got the quarterback and Will Anderson. So it was as much a trade for CJ Stroud as it was for Will Anderson. So you couldn't trade up with them. Arizona were, I think, very unlikely to deal with you. Hey, team in the NFC West, you want to trade up for a franchise quarterback, and you're the guy who drafted Russell Wilson and thought the world of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Yes, have that player who will destroy us every single week. Not every week, I'm playing twice, but you get my point. So who were you trading up with then? The Colts? By all accounts, they just wanted to stick and pick their quarterback. So, this idea, I don't think they could have traded up. I'm going to share this just because it's 3:18 in the morning and I'm doing this. Is there anybody else who has sent a question in? Will says, how do you feel about Latu? Personally, if he's available at 16, I'd run the picky myself. I think he's technically very good. I think his hands are superb. He has got a real knack of, he's almost like a silent killer as a pass rusher. Like, he slips blocks very well. Short arms, though, not an elite tester. There is some medical checks that will need to happen there with his neck. I do not see Latu being a game wrecker. I kind of think he might be a poor man's Jalen Phillips, who I really liked. And for me, I think there will be better options at number 16. Okay, I think that's where we are. Taste Buds has said Peddick's going top 10. I don't see that. But he could be the pick for the Seahawks. I do think that's possible. Anyway, I've done nearly an hour on my own. Robbie will be with us tomorrow. I'm going to go and write up the day now, so check out that article on SeahawksDraftBlog.com very soon. The content is pouring out the blog and on the channel. So why would you want to miss any of it? So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're checking out SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Make sure you're checking KJR out on Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, because I'm going to be on there for a weekly hit with Puck and Jim, the great Puck and Jim. Make sure you check that out, because we're doing that again next Wednesday. And all that's left to say is like the video, leave a comment in the comment section, because that always helps. Make sure you subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with Robbie. We'll get to talk about quarterbacks, get to talk about receivers, get to talk about running backs. We'll see you tomorrow for that. Until then, bye for now.